Usually, when we come into work every day, we spend our entire day asking you guys tons and tons of questions and getting your opinion on them. But for this series, we wanted to go behind those questions and figure out why it is that you guys feel the way that you do. So a couple months ago, we asked you guys whether or not you thought public schools should provide free tampons and menstrual products to all students. And overwhelmingly, you all agreed yes, they absolutely should. So we took it upon ourselves to go find an expert in all things periods, menstruation, period taboo, and ask her why she thought that might be. So we found that person in the form of someone named Nadya Okamoto, who is a 21-year-old activist. She's obviously a published author. At age 16, she founded a nonprofit that focused on delivering menstrual products to homeless people in her community. And that organization has now grown to having over 600 chapters across the country, which is crazy. She has founded her own consulting firm, and she's also a student at Harvard and has run for local city council. So she's just slightly busy. And in the midst of all of that busy schedule, she agreed to speak with us in between a talk that she gave at Adweek in New York City and taking a flight to Sweden. So we caught up with Nadya in a staircase. Okay, so today I am going to Adweek, which is like this huge advertising marketing conference held in New York City.
Nice to meet you. I just want to say thank you for talking about that. Happy someone asked that question.
Thank you so much. What's your name? Mary. Okay, I'm all yours.
I'm Nadya Okamoto. I'm 21 years old and I'm a junior at Harvard College. And I'm the founder and executive director of a nonprofit called Period. Just published my first book with Simon & Schuster called Period Power. And I'm chief brand officer at Juve Consulting, a Gen Z marketing agency.
So when I was talking with Nadya, the first thing that I wanted to know is how she actually started writing this book. And I was telling her how this was something that I really wish that I had had as like a 10-year-old. Because there's so much in here, but a lot of it is, this is what's going on with your body, but also here's the entire cultural relevance of this thing that is something you are experiencing, but something that people have experienced for generations and generations, and it's culminated into this weird taboo, we don't talk about it environment.
My motivation to write a manifesto for the menstrual movement came from learning about things like the Riot Girl Manifesto, the Red Stocking Manifesto of the second wave feminist movement, right? There were these defining texts that anyone who read it could be like, this is what we're fighting for.
It was just really striking to me how much of a celebrity she's kind of gained. So I wanted to ask Nadya what it was like to be tokenized in that way, to have that title of youth activist, but also to tell me a lot about what it's like to be an activist from age 16 onward and to not wait for permission to make a change in the world.
I think that through all of my work with leading Period and being a young woman of color in activism, especially an Asian woman, because there's not actually a lot of public figure Asian activists, right? Through all of that work that I'm doing, I am constantly tokenized as the young activist, the woman of color, just like the activist overall, the Generation Z person in the room. And I think that it's this sort of double-edged sword, right? Because on one hand, it can sometimes feel very degrading. At the same time, I don't have any shame about using it, right? Like I stand up and say, yeah, I'm a young 21-year-old Asian American activist, include me in your stuff, right? Whatever your motive is, if you give me a platform to speak on, I will share my ideas. So many times when I am tokenized in spaces, it's like, Nadya, you're like no other young person we have talked to, right? You are so unusual. And I would say, you can tokenize me, but don't say that I'm the only one who's like this, because I'm not, and I think that I'm humbled every day because I go on social media, I meet all of these young people who I think are so much more intelligent and cool and fearless than I am, and not to compare, but I think that I'm so inspired by my peers and so humbled by my peers every day, right? Like to watch someone like Greta, I'm like, you cannot tokenize me as the only person, right? And if you think that I am so unusual, like to my generation, then you just haven't talked to enough young people.
Oftentimes, I feel like in my own life, I I constantly feel the need for permission in order to do something and in order to act. And Nadya, obviously, in acting from such a young age, did not have that sort of inhibition. So I was curious about whether or not she ever felt anything like that, or if it was just constantly ingrained in her from day one that when you see something wrong in the world, you fight to change it.
You know, I'm very fortunate to have grown up in a family where my mom really instilled, if you think something is wrong, speak up about it. And I think that I always had the permission to act on things and speak out about things. So when I learned about period poverty, I don't think I had this, I shouldn't because I don't see anyone else doing it, or I don't know if I have permission. It was like, I think if anything, I was motivated by people are telling me not to do this, so I'm going to do it.
Nadya was explaining to me how she felt like, rather than it be her civic duty, she honestly felt like her reasons for founding Period, the organization, were somewhat selfish in her mind, which I was shocked by.
Complete honesty, I think the reasons I started Period were less about a duty to change the issue, and I think it was more selfish. You know, when I started, I think now it has become my duty. Like now I'm like, how can I have this platform and how can I know about these issues and not do anything about it? It is my duty to do something about it. Really angry about an issue, very angry, like keep me up at night being like, how's the tampon tax a thing? And I think I felt so powerless and voiceless and like worthless in a lot of sense, like at that time in my life. And when I learned about period poverty and started talking to people about periods and realizing I could change their idea about something like periods in 2 minutes, that was so invigorating and exciting to me, right? The fact that like knowing like, okay, my potential and my power is not just from my body as a young woman. My potential and my power can come from my voice, right? And look what I can do. I can go talk to my friends and get them to collect period products with me. And oh my God, like now I can get all these adults to like give me money to support what we're doing. And now like, and then I got really addicted to our impact numbers of being like, oh my gosh, I mobilized with my friends and now we serve 20 homeless women. And then I would, I'm so nerdy, would figure out the exponential equation behind how many periods we had served. So every week I'd be like, oh my God, we served 100. Wait, we served 1,000. Wait, we served 5,000. So I think that like, now I feel it is my duty to do this work. But when I started, I really believe like activism saved my life because it gave me a reason to like feel like I could live. And I think that it's a dangerous thing now for that to be how and why I started in a lot of ways, because now I have to be very cognizant of like my tendency to tie my self-worth to the impact or the work that I'm doing. I needed that in my life at the time, and then it became like, okay, now I have a platform and I built a structure to serve, and that's what we have a duty to do now. And I think that, you know, now it's cool to be an activist. Now, like to get into college, you want to be an activist. I think it's trying to push that label and say like, yes, but it's actually the real work. Like, what impact metrics have you made in this world?
So Nadya also talked about what's known as kind of this slacktivism trend, where people just kind of lean into the fact that activism is very cool and it's a cool thing to participate in. So people will, you know, go to a couple protests, take a couple pictures, post on Instagram, and like, that's not to discredit their passion behind a topic, but as Nadya points out, it's not really making change, and she did not want to be that. And so she had to kind of go through this realization with herself where the numbers that her organization was kind of creating definitely reflected impact, but it was more so about this long-term mindset shift away from the period taboo that she was working so hard to fight against.
And now, like, it is popular for brands to cast activists in campaigns, right? Because people are obsessed with activism, you know? And it's trendy now. And I think that what sets apart activists to me is like, what have you done outside of social media? Yes, social media, cultural change is everything, but like, what are you doing behind the scenes, right? And I think I get a lot of criticism for people thinking that I only do this to up my own image, like how many followers do I have and things like that. But I think the people who work with me know that I'm really in this for the right reasons, because for every story post you see, there's like 8 hours of me sitting by myself doing emails or on the phone or doing trips. And I think that, flying to Sweden, but like on the airplane, it's not this glamorous, like I'm flying. Like, no, I'm like grueling under my computer trying to do real work that no one's gonna see.
So I asked her whether or not she felt like the activism part of her life ever felt like it kind of took over too much of her personal life. And she told me that she really felt like when she was working so hard for this stuff, for fighting for the menstrual movement, that's when she felt like she was being her full self. But at the same time, she was like, I don't really have a social life. And I think it was interesting to hear someone who is so dedicated to a specific cause and what the give and take is for that cause.
I don't even think of myself as like Nadya activist, Nadya student. I'm just like, this is Nadya. And part of that is an identity as an activist, you know? I think what there is a danger in is losing sight of Nadya outside of work, you know? Like, I don't really have a social life, you know? Like, my mom and my sisters always call me this for me. They're like, Nadya, you have no real friends. And I'm like, yes, I do. Look at all the people I talk to every day. And I'm like, what? They're like, which one of those do not work for you? Yeah. And which one of those are not partners of yours in work, you know? And I'm like, like a few, but like not the ones I hang out with, you know? And so I think that it's not like I lose sight of my identities. I think I have a lot of identities, but I think what I do lose sight of is like personal versus professional life, right? Because I see them as one, and I see myself as an activist point, like who I am and what I do, I also sometimes think of my professional life as my personal life, you know? And I think that that's something that I really need to be cognizant of.
So in the last 5 years, Nadya has written a book, started a nonprofit organization, run for local city council, got into and started attending Harvard, and founded her own consulting firm. So I asked her, what in the world could she possibly have planned for the next 5 years?
I dream really big, and I dream of like where I want to be and whatever, but I do not put specifics to it, right? Like I mean, I get asked every day, like, what do I want to be when I'm older? Am I going to run for office? Like, everyone's asking me if I'm going to run for president. No, I'm not going to. Yes, yeah, on stage. But like,
that was crazy.
Yeah, but like people always ask me about running, and my answer is no. I don't want to run again at this moment. If you're asking me, like,
you already know that.
No, but for me, it's because I think what running for office taught me is to have a deep respect and appreciation for people who do run for office, because I'm so deeply passionate about what I care about. Yeah. And for me, that was housing affordability when I ran, and now it's gender equality. And I think that I can make the most change if I specialize and focus in that. But in 5 years, I hope to be done with school. And honestly, I hope that in 5 years we have gotten rid of the tampon tax nationally in the US. And I think that if we work really hard and we get a lot of really strong partnerships and do a lot of more media work, we could do it in 5 years, you know, and that would be a goal for me.
It's going to be fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we did this. Yes, for sure. Me too. For sure. It's going to be great. Amazing. I know. Thank you.
All right, let's get you on your way.
Bye. 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 She's just...
We went to Nadya to ask her why people might feel so passionate about increasing access to menstrual products in public schools. But what we ended up talking to her about was passion itself, and why anyone from age 16 or whatever age onward might feel so inclined to create a change in the world, even without permission, and what it actually looks like to take the steps to make that change. This series is all about finding answers to your questions. So if there's anything that you want to know everything about, put it in the comments, let us know, and we'll go after it for you.